Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome to the most spectacular game of the round 5 of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals in 2022. We have here chess prodigy Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa versus Jan-Krzysztof Duda, one of the most aggressive attackers in chess in the world. A very great match we have seen between the two of them. I will eventually reveal you the result of their match at the end of the video, but first we'll analyze one game and then afterwards we'll talk about the current standings, more about opportunities, who has the best chances to win the whole thing. So let's check out now simply the best game of the round 5 here. Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa played with the white pieces and opened with the move e4. Here Jan-Krzysztof Duda response was the move e6, the French defense d4, and after move d5 here black is already challenging the center of the board. Here in the continuation we have now knight to c3, the so-called Positional variation. After d takes e4, knight to e4 we have the Rubinstein variation, and after move bishop to d7 we have now the so-called fourth Knox variation, where black is actually trying to reroute the bishop on c6, because many times we have talked about the problems about the light square bishop, where should this light square bishop be placed, and many times the light square bishop has a tough time where to go. So that's why here the main idea is to reroute the bishop on c6, where it has a decent activity. But the downside about this line is of course that you're breaking a certain principle in chess, which says that you should not play with the same piece twice. Well, okay, I play the line, I think it's very often played, but in my opinion, as I said, it breaks a certain concept that you should not do in particular openings. So here in the continuation, knight to f3, we have now this idea, bishop to c6. Okay, we're creating also an attack against the knight, but now Prague will develop simply the bishop on d3 and is protecting now the knight on e4. Knight to d7, preparing now the move knight to f6, kingside castling, knight to f6, and now knight to g3. Simply retreating here with this knight. Here Prague also plays with the same piece twice in the opening, but I think this is a beautiful choice, because when you are watching now the structure, if you allow your opponent here with rook to e8, if you allow him simply too much of a simplification here, if you allow him many pieces to be traded off, I think then you don't gain anything here from white's perspective. I think you want to get more out of your openings if you're playing with the white pieces. Of course you can trade off on e4, but this is not a way to go. So that's why here knight to g3 is a beautiful move here by Prague. But now when you're not on e4, actually black can develop in a beautiful way with bishop to d6, getting this bishop on this beautiful active diagonal, and here I think Jan-Krzysztof Duda already makes a tiny little inaccuracy when it comes to openings. He plays now the move g6, nothing spectacular. Of course we cannot say black is losing the game because you played the move g6, but I kind of don't like this move because you're weakening a little bit your dark squares. Look at this, you have so many pawns or light squares. The dark squares actually can be attacked here with the move bishop to g5. So already weird move for my taste here by Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So that's why here rook to e1. Prague is controlling the e file. The most important thing is that he's controlling the square e5. So never black is going to break the position in the center with potential e5 moves. So that's why rook to e1, perfectly fine move. So we have bishop to g7, and you see now how weak this structure with the move g6 is, because now Prague can even open the position with the move h5. He will let simply the position explode now on the king side. You can of course stop it with the move h5, but now with bishop to g5 we're attacking further the dark squares. You play kingside castling, c3, fixing everything, queen to d2, maybe in the later stage, maybe even knight to e5, queen to d2, rook to d1, and I think you have a perfect setup here. No weaknesses in white's position, so it's I think a decent game. So here after move h4, Jan-Krzysztof Duda didn't play the move h5, he simply castled, but now h5 anyway by Prague. He is simply challenging further the structure because you played simply g6 in the first place. Let's see now what happens if you play knight to h5. This wasn't again played in the game, but now look at this, knight to h5, g takes h5, this is weak, this is weak, this structure is not good. Bishop to g5 will again happen in the near future. We will eventually take out the pawn. The bishops are very active, so I would really not love to play now this game from black's perspective. So that's why after move h5 we have now b6 with the preparation to play bishop to b7 and then c5. But I think here also Jan-Krzysztof Duda lost too much time. He could have played b6 and bishop to b7 in the first place. He should not have played this Fort Knox maneuver with bishop to d7, bishop to c6. Now he's going for the same plan, breaking and entering with the move c5, which we basically play many times in the French defense. So now again it seems to me that he's losing simply too much time in order to develop the pieces in a proper way. So in the continuation, Prague continues with normal development. Queen to e2 is trying also to play now with the bishop and fully develop himself by connecting the rooks, because the rook connection is of course also a very important stage of the opening. So we have now bishop to b7. Now Prague plays bishop to b4. We have now c5, challenging now the center, and now a brilliant choice here by Prague, c3, because if you don't play c3, if you allow maybe here something like this pawn to be taken, if you maybe take out with the knight. Look at this, after c3 you have to play, after c takes d4 you have to play with the c pawn. You cannot take with the knight. That's the main issue, because look at this, you're getting destroyed with the move e5. This is very dangerous here for white. So many of us I think would take out with the pawn, with the knight, because if you take with the pawn then you're left with an isolated pawn. But from this perspective, with the move c takes d4 you are controlling at least the e5 square. In the game here Prague took correctly with the pawn, but look at this, for instance, if you take out with the knight, then as I said, you're getting destroyed with the move e5. If you play bishop to e5, knight to e5, queen to e5, look at this, knight to h5 comes with a direct threat against the queen. You have to step back, knight to g3, queen to g3, bishop to d4. Look at this, everything is messed up. Black gained the pawn and has now a completely winning endgame here. The b2 pawn is weak, bishop on d3 is hanging, so it's not a good position anymore here for white. So that's why, as I said, really correct choice. After move c takes d4 here, c takes d4 was played by Prague. He's still not allowing this pawn breakthrough with the move e5. This is not an option here for black. Really great prophylactic here moves by Prague. So we have now knight to d5. Okay, here Jan-Krzysztof Duda is creating the blockade against the isolated pawn, which you're supposed to do. But now notice, when the knight is not on f6, it's not defending the king. Many times the knight on f6 is actually the best defender of your own king. Okay, Prague retreats here first of all with bishop to g5, attacks the queen. We have bishop to f6, and now Prague retreats to d2, and still this bishop is a little bit loose. The bishop has to stay where it's supposed to be here on g7, so Prague still has a decent activity with this dark square bishop, and still these two powerful knights that are attacking the king, and also with the support of the bishop. Look at this, this is already a nice attacking formation, and we can agree also the queen could come into the game. So we have now really already 5, 6, maybe when we include the rook, even 7 attackers that are directed to the king side. So as I said, I would not love to play now this game from black's perspective. So queen to e7. Here Jan is getting a new defender into the game, the queen on e7, and now knight to e4. Again, the bishop has to retreat on the square g7. And now an interesting choice by Prague, knight to g5. Although you can also play h6. h6 is also very interesting, because if you play bishop to f6, then you lose your bishop, which is your most powerful bishop. This is this fianchetto bishop. You don't want to lose it, because you're vulnerable then on dark squares. You can get even checkmate on g7. So you'll be forced maybe to retreat to h8. But now with bishop to f6, bishop to g5, you play f6, covering now the diagonal. We're playing bishop to d2, and now the e6 is suddenly weak. So it's also a nice idea here that Prague could have played, but he played a very aggressive move, knight to g5, and many of us wouldn't tolerate this knight. Let's see, for instance, what happens if you play the move h6. This wasn't played in the game, but let's see what would be a wise idea here. Actually, this move h6 would be also very bad here for black. The position is so bad already for black that actually you can even sacrifice the knight here. You can retreat, of course. Many of us would retreat, but actually you can even go with h takes g6, because if black takes now, the knight on g5 will pick up simply with the pawn. It comes with a check. You have to react. Rook to f7, and now we pick up another pawn. Again, you have to retreat with the rook. The e6 is weak. We'll get the queen into the game here on h5. Maybe we'll also find opportunities for the rook. Rook to e4, rook to h4. The bishops are still active here. So as I said, it's not, again, a good position here for black. Black, and I think can resign immediately. So that's why here, after knight to g5, Jan-Krzysztof Duda played rook to d8, but now comes the stunner of the game. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. It was a monstrous tactical shot that Prago pulled off here. Take your time and search for the best continuation. Really beautiful sharp game that Prago pulled off here. So as I said, you see how this structure was already weakened with the move g6, so you should really think about it twice when you're playing this fianchetto. Should I play the fianchetto, should I not? Because this is a perfect example how to attack the fianchetto, because here Prago pulled off really the move of the day, really the beautiful knight to h7, and this is devastating. This is now so destructive because this is really a demolition of the pawn structure here. What should you do? You have to react. You lost the pawn, king to h7. Now h takes g6 comes with a direct check. You have to take, and now the knight is again coming on this beautiful square g5. You have to step back, and now look at this, bishop to g6 is coming into the game. Now the queen is coming into the game. The e6 is weak, the f7 is weak. Still we have this beautiful bishop. The rook can also come into the game if necessary, so it's, I think, now a one-way ticket here for white. So really wild stuff. So let's see what happens. For instance, if you play maybe a bad move, if you play for instance something like rook to c8, then queen to h5 is going to happen and you don't have good defenses anymore. So that's why here Jan tried knight to f6. He's trying now to get a new defender into the game, which is of course a normal choice. But now again, beautiful choice here by Prago. Bishop to f7, king to h8, and now queen to d3. Beautiful idea here by Prago. He's now getting the queen on h3, and there is no good defense. Again, if you try maybe something like rook to c8, look at this, you get queen to h3, you can cover yourself, but you get checkmated on h7. So that's why here after move queen to d3, you have to bring now a new defender into the game, which was of course this other knight on f8. But now Prago plays queen to h3 anyway. Now you have to cover yourself with knight to h7, and now comes a new stunning tactic, rook to e6. Really wild stuff, brilliant tactics. If you of course take out with the knight, you don't want to take of course with the queen, then of course the knight gets deflected from the defense of the h7 knight, and then you have this beautiful checkmate here. So really beautiful game here by Prago. So that's why after rook to e6, here Jan-Krzysztof Duda sensed his mistakes here. He tried at least this defensive idea, bishop to c8, but Prago simply takes, rook to e7, bishop to h3, knight to h3. You can pick up also this pawn here, but now after bishop to c3, Prago simplifies the game, and when we watch now this potential endgame, okay, maybe it's not a clear win, but in top grandmaster level, these two connected pawns mean that white is simply winning. Still this bishop is active. The knight will come into the game, so it's now a completely winning game here for white for sure. So if here rook formate to c8 was played, now rook takes a7. Here Jan also took the pawn on c3. We have rook to e1, including now a new piece into the attack, of course. Very nice stuff here. We have rook to d7. Jan is trying to simplify the game, but of course it doesn't bother here Prago too, because if he simplifies the game enough, then still he has this powerful two connected pawns here on the king side, so still it's a winning endgame. So knight to d7, knight to f4, knight to f6, knight to d5, fork against the rook and the knight, knight to d5, bishop to d5. New simplification, new trades of pieces, still a playable endgame here for white, of course. Knight to f6, bishop to f3, we have king to g7, rook to b1 attacking now the pawn. Here in the continuation, rook to b2, knight to d7, bishop to e2, knight to c5, and now g3, of course, liberating this route for the king, so the king is supposed to play now also in this endgame. It's here knight to a4, we have rook to rook to d2, knight to c3, bishop to c4, protecting now the pawn on a2 here. And also we're trying to play bishop to b3, fixing everything, keeping everything compact here. Knight to e4 was played by Jan-Krzysztof Duda. We have rook to d7, a check, king to f8, rook to d4. Again, some attacks here by black, but nothing special. Still, Prago is protecting the pawn. We have b5, bishop to b3, b4, and here after king to g2, king to e7, and rook to d4. In this position, Jan-Krzysztof Duda resigns because there is no good defense anymore for the b4 pawn. You can maybe go into this line, knight to a2, bishop to a2, rook to a2, you lose also this pawn, and these two connected passers mean that, again, white is simply winning. So it's now a winning game for sure. So great game by Prago. He pulled off this brutal tactic on h7, destroyed here Jan-Krzysztof Duda. And in their match, actually, they played an equal result after 4 games. Then they played 2 additional games, in which Prague won 1 game, but also Jan-Krzysztof Duda played a win. And then they had to play the Armageddon game, in which Prague had the black pieces and managed to force a draw, which meant actually that Prague won his game against Jan-Krzysztof Duda, and which means also a very interesting result now in this tournament so far. Jan-Krzysztof Duda was always behind Magnus Carlsen, but now Jan lost yesterday his game. He lost also today his game. Now Magnus Carlsen is sole leader. In some occasions, maybe someone could catch up with Magnus Carlsen, but in my opinion, this is a tournament that's almost over. Magnus is winning, I think, this beautiful chess event for sure, but in my opinion, still we'll see beautiful, brutal, sharp games like this. Really beautiful game by the young prodigy, Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Fort Knox variation. If you want to see more about the French defense, you can also check out my studies about this opening. Here's the link of our playlist. And if you want to see maybe some other games that we have analyzed, check out some games that we have analyzed before from this tournament. Here are some games, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.